Good morning. It is very early. See, it's still dark outside, and I plug my light in, my little ring light that I use for winter videos um, because it's dark. But my light doesn't work. So I have a broken light, so we have poor lighting from my kitchen light, so we'll probably have some weird shadows. Anyway, that doesn't really matter. Um, Raise your hand if you're tired of the Joyous Prairie's Drama Fest. I know I am. So today I decided I would just, I guess, carry on. And yeah, anyway. So I'm going to go back to answering some questions. So, good morning. It's your INFJ mom. And I'm going to answer some parenting questions today that people asked me months ago before I got on this train wreck that I've been on. And I have a few, I just kind of compiled them, and I'm no expert. I do have 3 children. Two of them are mostly grown, and one is still, they're all 3 still in my home. They're 19, 17, 13. So maybe I'm an expert in raising the young children, but we'll see about teenagers, and, you learn as you go. So question 1 is, what have you learned about yourself as a married mom that you didn't know before? I really had to think about this one because, I was a young mom. I was 21 years old, and I can hardly remember myself before that, But I was thinking about kind of the feelings I went through, or maybe the thoughts I had when I was having babies and raising them and, taking care of these little souls. There was a few things that came to my mind, strength, love, and how little sleep a person actually requires. And I always tell people that have young children, because we tend to complain about whatever life situation we're in. And when we have young children, the lack of sleep is pretty profound. And young children are very demanding because they have to be, they need a lot of care. So, and they're very, very dependent on their parents, as it should be. That's just the way we're made as humans. We don't come out, perfectly able to care for ourselves. So we need good caregivers that will meet our needs, And then as they get older, you can, teach them to do different things. But what I learned about myself is how strong I was. I did not, of course, dogs. This is why I usually film in my bedroom with the door closed, because the dogs. But I didn't realize how strong I was. I didn't realize how fierce I was until my first child was born. And anyone that's gone through childbirth, it takes a lot of strength to go through that. But that's not the part I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is it took me by great surprise, the fierceness and protectiveness and like the mother bear that people talk about, how that came out of me having children. I desperately wanted to have children. I wanted a whole bunch of children. That isn't the way it went. But I can remember having thoughts after my daughter was born. They were thoughts of protection over my child that actually scared me because they were so fierce. And, the thought like I would die for you came to mind, quite a bit. And that is what I learned about myself, like how strong I was and how much of a fighter I would be for my children if necessary. And how I could, how just the depth of, I'm having difficulty explaining it, but yeah, that really, I learned that about myself, like that intensity of how much I would do for these little humans that I created, well, God created, but that my husband and I made together. The other part was, I think having children really, really, for the first time, I completely understood love. And, I had difficulty really understanding love. Love looked like a lot of different things to me. And I can't say that I didn't love people, I did, but there's a different kind of love for different people. And having children and caring for and holding this little thing, I really understood love completely for the first time. It was that, self-sacrificing, unconditional love. I finally understood it, what it meant. That unconditional love that, everybody talks about. And I also, the very first time, every time that my husband held one of our children for the first time, I completely understood how much I loved him watching that. Making him a father and seeing that pure love towards his children. And I can see it in my mind when he held our daughter, our firstborn, for the first time, moments after she was born. And that on his face, that just pure love. Yeah, I learned what love was. And I loved him differently from that day forward. Just seeing him be a father and how much he just loved this little child, like at first sight. And even when, I really wondered when my second child was born, I kind of wondered, I knew, I loved my children from the moment I found out that they were, maybe even before I found out that I'd conceived them, but I really wondered if my firstborn would love my secondborn and my thirdborn, and on and on. Would she love him at first sight, or would it take time for that relationship to develop? Now, my daughter was 20 months old, so she's really tiny, but watching my older children just gather in and accept the love, and love this new little sibling immediately just blew me away. And learning what love looks like over the years in a relationship and with your children, that's what I learned. That I did not have an understanding of what love really was, that unconditional mother's and father's love, and even love for, my husband and father of my children. I really didn't understand prior to having children what that actually was. Not that you need to have children to understand completely what love is, but I did, you know. I won't get into why. This is a different video. But next question. Boy, I talked a long time on that. Next question. Will my children forget about me when I go to work? Will the bond that I work so hard be broken, and will they forget me? No. No. If you spent the time and the energy and I held my babies all the time. The older ladies would tell me you're spoiling your baby, and I'd be like, all right, then they're going to be spoiled. I'm going to hold them all the time. I wore my babies, because that was survival for me. That was easier for me. And the second part of this question is, this young mom is worried that, is this personal paranoia, or is this an INFJ thing, to worry that your children will forget you when you go to work and the bond that you created with them will be broken? I don't know if it's an INFJ thing or a personal paranoia, but I know that I had the same fears with my daughter, my firstborn. I worried that, if she was in the hands of another caregiver, that when I got home and when I returned, that she would not be as bonded to me. And that really wasn't the case. She, adapted to, which was her grandma, her caregiver was her grandma. And she adapted to being under the care of grandma, and I learned to love that difference in how she cared for my daughter and my boys later, and how I did and how my husband did. And I really dedicated myself at that point in my life to caring for my children. That is really all I did. I did go to work a couple days a week. I enjoy going to work. It's kind of a break for me from life, I guess. And I've always loved going to work, but I didn't work very much either. And it really, um, I really dedicated myself to caring for my children and spending time with them and learning who they were, even at a very young age, and learning what they needed. And that came really easy to me. You know, raising young children was super easy for me. I was able to, you know, probably with that FE, that extroverted feeling, I was really able to see what they needed. You know, they were crying and I could tell they're sad or they're cold or they're hungry or whatever. You know, young babies and toddlers and young children were so easy for me. And I thought, I have got this parenting thing down. Like, I am a great mom. And and then as you have each child, you have to learn each child because they are their own human, you know, and they're being, even though they're born into the same family, they are not really, because, you know, my firstborn was born to two parents, no sibling. You know, so my secondborn is born to an older sister and two parents. And my third is born to two older siblings and parents. And, you know, life changes. So, you know, we always say, like, well, they're all raised by the same, in the same home. How can they be so different? Well, because they're really not. You know, things change and the dynamic changes. And I was also concerned that I would not be able to, you know, and this is probably every mom's concern at some point, I would not be able to love my subsequent children the same as I loved my firstborn. And no, your heart just grows. You know, you just make more room. You don't love any of them any less, which sounds crazy, but that is really the truth. You just don't. You love them all so unbelievably much. And yeah, ways of connecting with my children. This one, you know, when they're little, it's simple. You know, you sit with them, you answer all their why questions. You you know, figure out what they like to do and you do it with them. It's basically, you know, my when I parented a young child, I was a lot very affectionate and hands-on. And that was something I had to learn from my husband because I did not come from an affectionate family, and I could see that my children needed that. So that is what I gave them. And then I came to love it and become very hands-on, you know, with them. And as they grow, you kind of learn what they need. You know, some of them need more time with you, and some of them just need a little bit, and then they can go on their little merry way, you know. And you just stay in tune with them and completely open up your extroverted feeling for those young kids, and it's easy, you know. At least it came easy to me. Now when things became difficult for me is when the hormones entered the picture, you know, the teenage stage. Now the dog's again here. The teenage stage. And I am like in the throes of that right now. You know, my daughter's 19, so we're pretty much past that section. And now I'm learning how to be her friend and how to be her like wiser, older advisor, I guess, rather than mom, you know, rather than continuing to parent, because, you know, you gotta kind of release them to, you know, you hope that you have put enough into their hearts that they are going to make good choices. And of course, they're always going to make mistakes because, you know, we make mistakes. We're human beings. But you have to release them, you know, into adulthood. And that was, I know I went through, when my daughter, I think, turned like 13 or 14. I actually went through a grieving process. Like, I was so devastated that I was going to have to alter the way I parented and not continue to be what I was because I had to allow my children to grow up. They could not stay small. And I had a difficult time for a while. Like I grieved the childhood of my children, even though they were still with me and they were so, full of energy and fun and exuberant teenagers. I had to grieve their childhood. It was this very strange thing that I went through. But teenagers have been a little bit more difficult for me. So much emotion. And I can be having a really fabulous day and really feel settled and happy and kind of bubbly. And if one of my teenagers like enters my house and they are angry, hungry, tired, sad, upset, whatever, it can just, because I'm so connected to my children and my husband, of course, because, that's who I live with and I don't armor up for them. Them walking in with that can kind of ruin my day. And because that connection is, well, now the dogs are going to fight over here, so just never mind all the noise. And because that connection is so intense, and because I've always, like connected straight to their hearts, or at least tried to, I have to understand that this is not my, it's not my emotion, and I also have to respect their boundaries. They don't always want mom coming in and identifying their emotions for them, trying to give them a solution. Sometimes they need space, they need time to think it over. My oldest and my youngest are extroverted, so I can talk to them directly a lot of the time, and I have to come at it, especially with my oldest child, my daughter. I have to come at it as if I am speaking to a friend at this point because she is an adult and I can't come in, with this mama bear and speak down to her, condescending. I have to come at it like she is a younger friend of mine. So that was a little bit of a change. And, my middle child is introverted and he's an INTP. I don't know if and I'm learning more about them because they are kind of mysterious creatures a little bit, kind of like an INFJ is, but just different. They think, they really think a lot. And he has a sensitive, soft heart, and I have to come at him gently. I can't come at him, with like, what's going on? Why are you feeling this way? And I have to come at him gently and show him love. And even though he is towering over at me at this point, and he is like a, man child, he still needs his mama's love. So I have to continue to connect with him and continue to speak to him in a way that's respectful and doesn't come too harshly, And not that I'm really ever terribly harsh, but sometimes it can come across that way when you have a teenager that is really in, that grip of teenage angst and emotion. And yeah, the teenagers I'm learning the teenagers, and maybe I'll have it figured out by the time my 13-year-old gets into the throes of that whole deal. We'll see. Maybe not. My husband, great with teenagers. Fabulous with teenagers. Like I have had days where I'm like, okay, it's your turn. You can parent now because I don't know what I'm doing. And he seems to handle them very well. So that is a good balance. Yeah, that's the end of my questions. And I have, 19 minutes. Okay, Joy, we were talking enough today. I hope that I was helpful or insightful, or maybe, I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, that's those questions. We have a few more questions that I have on my list of questions to answer. And then it is the time of year where I ask you questions. So I have a list of questions just like last year that we will be starting as soon as I get, through your questions. And please send more because I will add them to a list for future videos. But yeah, that's enough for today. We are almost at 20 minutes. I talked a long time. See you later, guys. Live and love out of the way you were created.